Okay, get into your folder and go to your comic character prep file. And instead of just double clicking and opening it in Photoshop, we want to do a right click and open with Adobe Illustrator. When this window comes up, go to Flatten Layers to a single image and say OK. And once you're in Illustrator, you want to go to the Selection tool, which is your very top tool. And with the Selection tool, go ahead and click on your character, and you'll notice you'll get a selection. And in Illustrator, a selection is points and paths. We won't see marching ants ever in Illustrator, just points and paths. So with that selected, go to your Tools option panel, and you want to pull where it says Image Trace, pull the window down and go to Silhouettes and say OK. All right, and so then you should end up with something that looks like a very nice black and white image. From there, we're going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to do a File, Save As. And we want to save this as an Illustrator EPS. So go to Illustrator EPS, and at this point, we're going to name it with our last name, our first name, and we'll call it Comic Book Character. And just say OK and keep everything here on default. And we can close out of Illustrator. Okay, so now in my folder, I have my prep image that's a PSD file and my new image, which is an EPS file. I'm going to right click on that EPS file and open with Adobe Photoshop. And you'll notice that it did adjust the size that I had originally set this to. If you remember, I set this to an 8.5, so I'm just going to change the width back to 8.5, and that puts the height really close to 11, and the resolution is still at 300, and we can actually move this up to RGB color and say OK. All right, so if we want to get this at exactly 8.5 by 11, we can go ahead and do a crop again. Should be pretty easy. It's really, really close. And then just accept. All right, so now I have an exact 8.5 by 11 with the 300 resolution on this. And it has already removed everything that was white. It has removed from my image, which is really nice. So I'm just dealing with a black image at this point. All right, so I am going to go ahead and name layer 1. I'll just call this Star-Lord. You can name it whatever your character is or whoever your character is. And then I'm going to use the pen tool now. So I'm going to go to my pen tool. Once you activate the pen tool, you want to make sure you are on shape. You're going to set your fill color, and there's lots of swatches in here. You can grab whatever kind of skin tone that you want on this. And for the stroke, we're going to say no stroke. We don't want a stroke on that. Okay, once I start working with the pen tool, I don't need to worry about starting a new layer because it's going to create a shape layer for me. So I'm just going to come out here and I'm going to start clicking around the outside of his face here. So I'm going to start by doing his face, and I don't need to worry about being nice and neat around this area because this shape is going to actually go behind this black. But I do need to be careful along this edge because there's not much room for a mistake right there. So I will go ahead and start here and do the easy part first. Okay, so now that I've started my shape, you can look over at the layers panel. You can see I have that shape layer already started there. Okay, so right here, since I can't see under here, I'm going to come over to my layers panel and I'm going to turn the opacity down so I can see what I'm doing. And then I need to get to this edge where I need to be very careful. So let me zoom in now. And this is where, so far, you know, I've done straight just clicks. I haven't used the curve option on the pen tool yet, but now I'm going to need to do that because I'm getting into this area where I will probably have some curves going on, like right there. So if you recall, when you were learning about the pen tool, you click and pull, and then you can hold the option down to either move this handle, which will change the next curve, or you can remove it by clicking on the node. One other thing that's useful is if you come up to the Tools option panel and you pull this gear window down, you can click rubber band. That will show you like where your next move is going to be. So now you can see it's showing me if I click right here where the line's going to be. And I'm actually going to zoom in on that a little bit more. This was not the best move right there, so let me go back in time. Okay, so now I can see a little bit better. I want to make sure I'm staying inside this black line here. And a good rule of thumb when using the pen tool is to have as few clicks as possible. So you don't want to click everywhere on this. You don't want to be click, 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 click. So you want as few clicks as possible using that curve option if you need it. And it's really important that you go back to your first node. And notice when I hover the pen tool on that first node, I get this little circle next to the pen tool. That's telling me that I'm now closing the shape. And it's really important that you close that shape. So click, and that's my final click, and my shape is now closed. And I'm going to turn the opacity of that back up to 100. Command 0 to zoom out. And now I can drag that shape underneath my Star-Lord. And you can see what that did, okay? And which is why I didn't have to be terribly careful around here. Now I have some areas up in here, let me zoom into that, where the skin is kind of showing through his hair, and I will take care of that later when I do the shape for the hair layer. All right, I want to rename this to face. And next time I'm going to continue on with the pen tool, filling in his hair. I need to work on this raccoon a little bit and on his clothing down here. The last thing I want to do here is I want to file, save. And notice that it's going into my folder, but it's changing now to a PSD file. And that's what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and say save. And now in my folder, I have my prep file, which is also a PSD file. I have my EPS file. If I need that, I can get back to that. And now I have my new PSD file, which is named with my last name, my first name, and the name of my project. And that is going to be my project file. So that will be the file I'm going to work on from now on.